Okay, this is Denver Astronomical Society. We're doing an inReach tonight on the Artemis II mission. It's a compressed version of the mission, so we'll go over the highlights. And these are the 4 crew members. We'll go into their details later. My name is Joe Pineda. I'm a retired electrical engineer. I work Space Shuttle from 1977 to 1997 at Johnson Space Center in Houston for Lockheed, what was then called Lockheed Electronics. And I worked in a facility called ESTL, the Electronic Systems Test Laboratory. And that focus was communication, signal processing, electronics design, modeling and simulation, cost and schedule. So that was for Project Shuttle. After that, I moved to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, working for Lockheed Martin there, and the plant in Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is very close by. So in 2006, I was working in Valley Forge, and Lockheed won the contract, and so I was assigned to it. And I did most of the work was done at Newtown. When the work share moved to Denver, Colorado, I moved with it. So I was out at Waterton Canyon most of the time. There was a few other off-site locations we worked. Because this is a mission that's about to happen, there are some, and I'm a signals guy, there are some things about this mission that are sensitive. So I will not go into great detail on comms. But I will give you like a thumbnail overview of the Artemis mission, Artemis II mission. You can get a deeper dive into this if you go to nasa.gov and just look for Artemis II. That's where most of this information comes from. So we're going to start off with booster, the SLS, Space Launch System. So the SLS is a super heavy launch vehicle. It's the largest rocket ever made by the hand of man. And the development started in 2011. The main engines are shuttle heritage. They are the same as the shuttle main engines, RS-25s. And NASA was able to make this design work with that and save a lot of money on nozzle design and engine design. So whereas shuttle had 3 of these, SLS has 4. The solid rocket boosters on the sides are shuttle heritage as well, and so they're scalable. The way that the solid rocket boosters work is they use an oxidizer and propellant that's solid, so they call it a solid rocket booster. The oxidizer is chemistry is aluminum perchlorate, which is I think AlCl chlorine, and then O3, and it will oxidize just about anything. And the propellant, I think, is powdered aluminum. And the way they make these things is they make donuts, annular rings, and they can stack them. So you can scale these things so that if you need a longer burn time, you just build a taller SRB. The unique thing about the SRBs from a comms perspective, and this is shuttle dialogue I'm talking now, is that the aluminum perchlorate and the aluminum propellant, when exhaust comes out the back of the rocket, it's opaque to RF. So if you look at a lot of the static firing tests that Morton Thiokol did of the booster, what you'll see at the exhaust end of the booster are antennas on both sides of the plume as it's burning. And they were curious just how much attenuation a radio signal coming back from shuttle would see. So as you may know, there's a tracking station at Merritt Island, very close to the launch site. The problem is the Merritt Island tracking station that has comms on the way up to the rocket is looking up the back end of the rocket. And with all that RF opaque plume coming down, they needed another one. I don't know if this is coincidence or this is the reason. So there's another one down the coast called Ponce de Leon, and that site has a better look angle to the rocket. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. The other thing about the rocket is, what's in the news today, is the propellant and the oxidizer for the main engines. It's liquid oxygen. and liquid hydrogen, which are hypergolic, meaning they explode on contact. Nevertheless, when the rocket lights, those main engines light off at T-minus 8 seconds, you see the sparkers, I don't know what you call them, but the sparks, they want to make sure there's nothing left unburnt. So, and then down below that, at T-minus, well before T-minus 8, you'll see a water deluge. So what happens is, when the SRBs and the main engines light off, they create a shock wave. And the shock wave is so powerful, it can do damage to the rocket. And so what that water deluge does, besides just cooling everything, is it absorbs the acoustics that come out the back end of the rocket. So that's very important. And then, let's see. Comparing this to the Saturn V, the Saturn V had F4, F5 engines, 250,000 horsepower each. Because of the SRBs on this one, they were able to use the shuttle main engines, and they didn't have to get quite the same thrust, or what rocket guys would call specific impulse, coming out the back end of the rocket to lift the thing off the launch pad. So the solid rocket boosters are a nice thing to have. On Apollo, you'll see above the oxygen tank, which is up above the hydrogen tank, since you need 2 hydrogens for every oxygen. Above that, you see no second stage. There's no second stage like there was on Apollo. So this lower stage and the SRBs do most of the heavy work of getting things into orbit. Above that, there's called the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, the ICPS. On Apollo, I guess the closest thing you'd call would be the S4B. And so on Apollo, they made orbit, and they'd circle a few times, and once everything was checked out, they fired off the S4B, and they did translunar injection, TLI. On Artemis, when you hear TLI, go for TLI, that's a big deal, because now they're going to leave Earth orbit for the first time with people in 50 years. So that's kind of a big deal. So that's it. And above that is the reason that we're all here, is the Orion and the European Service Module. So the European Service Module is part of the ESA. There's a lot of countries involved in making that. And the Orion is what I worked on out at Waterton for comm, communications. Okay, that's enough about that, I think. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is Orion first. We're going to work on the capsule. Okay, so the Orion, when I first got here, they were working on the pad abort tests. And so when you have a rocket, ever since Project Mercury, where you have an explosive device below living people, and something goes wrong, you want to be able to abort and pull the capsule safely away from the launch pad. And so the launch abort system is the thing that's on the very tip top. And also it has issues that it has to solve with pulling the Orion capsule away from the rest of the rocket. So that's what it does. That's its job. It has a jettison motor at the top, so that if it doesn't get used, you have to dispose of it, and it's done after I think on the verge of getting into space. And below that is the actual abort motor, which is fires when if there's an emergency and there's a call for abort. So the commander of the mission, and I can do it, I don't know who else can, so that's really all there needs to be said about that. So below that, you see a bell-shaped shroud. Some people on Apollo, they used to call that the boost protective cover. So as the vehicle is going uphill, you get to a position in the ascent called max Q, maximum dynamic pressure, breaking the sound barrier. And so when you watch the rocket as it goes up, you'll see this what do you call it, contrail or plume around the rocket that slowly moves down. That's the shock wave. And so that shock wave is not trivial. I mean, it wasn't exactly clear to me that we needed a boost protective cover when we were looking at comms for Orion, but I'm sure the mechanical guys decided we did. So the interesting problem with the boost protective cover that Pavlina probably knows about is there has to be a door so that the astronauts can get into the capsule. So there's a door on the boost protective cover, and another one, a hatch that opens to let you in the command module. And so the crew module, actually, they call it. Yeah. So the crew module is a little over 16 feet in diameter. Apollo, by comparison, was 8 feet in diameter. Apollo had a crew of 3. I think when we started the contract with Orion, there were more than 4. They're going to fly 4 on this first mission with people. And that's basically, it has life support, living space, it has displays and controls, command data handling, the computers, comms, a lot of black boxes, and all of that is contained in the crew module. Also, there is an umbilical, which is not easy to see in this image, that connects the crew module to the European service module, which is directly below it. You can barely make it out. I'll see if I can move. You see this little piece right here? There's quick disconnects, cable quick disconnects on this that allow the command module to separate from the European service module on reentry. The European service module, unlike Apollo, is not, if they have fuel cells, I never heard about it. So I think they're using entirely solar power and batteries. So that's a good thing. And it also has a lot of reaction control system, RCS, and it also has the main engine. And the crew module also has RCS, retro rockets, if you want to call them that. Below that, there is a fairing adapter, a spacecraft adapter, which adapts it to the rest of the SLS. And there is also panels that blow off that you see there, the adapter jettisonable panel. And in the picture just below it, you can see how the solar arrays are affixed. There's the 4 sets of arrays around the circumference of the European service module. You can also see the main engine. On Apollo, I think that was called the SPS. So that's how that is. What else can I say about this? Oh yeah, so crew module can support a crew, 4 crew members for up to 21 days. The mission, it calls for a 10-day mission. So they have a lot of design margin in this first mission. And I think that's really all I want to say about that. Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the mission itself. If you look at the Earth, you'll see it launches out of Kennedy. It goes into a circular orbit. It fires the interim cryogenic propulsion module to go into a high orbit with a high, it's elliptical. So it goes way up high, about, I think it's 1,800 nautical miles, and then it comes back down to Earth in this elliptical orbit. So think of a roller coaster. So it fires the engine, and it goes further out from the Earth, and then it comes back down. And as it comes back down to Earth, it's traveling faster and faster, and it does like this. So on the way down, it's really booking when it gets to close back to near Earth. The other thing about this is the high apogee is 1,800 nautical miles up, as I've read. I'm not in the mission planning group anymore, it's been 11 years since I worked the program, so that's what I've heard. 1,800 nautical miles puts you in the inner of the 2 Van Allen belts. The Van Allen belts, there's 2 of them. The inner belt is high energy protons, neutrons, and that's the more dangerous, the more, the one that would cause you some issues. The outer belt is free electrons, mostly. So free electrons can cause a problem with communications, but it's the heavy neutrons and protons, well, they can too. The charged particles can, that can interfere with comms, and they can also do damage. So all the crew, whether or not this is an issue or not, I'm not a medical guy, I can't say, but they are wearing dosimeters on their suits. Okay. So they do a couple of roundabouts around the Earth. They check the systems out, and then they get a go for burn. So the ICPS propels them up to this high inclination, way up there, and then they come down and they check things out. I don't know if they do that just once or not. But then when they get a go for TLI, go for translunar injection, they are coming, I think they're coming back down. And so they're accelerating. And so unlike Apollo, where you had to fire the S-4B, which is this great big third stage on the Saturn V, they only have to fire the main engine because they already have so much velocity because the Earth is pulling them down that they're actually doing what amounts to an Earth flyby, and so they save the energy. And so the SPS, I mean the European Service Module main engine doesn't have to do all that extra work. So you get enough delta V from that, and you can do this figure eight. Now you'll notice that the figure eight is just a once around. And I did some looking. I couldn't find anything on mission planning for this or why they're doing it that way. However, I did find this one thing called a near rectilinear halo orbit, which is, so there's all these orbital dynamicists that look at optimal orbits and trajectories, and what they do is they come up with an optimal way to get to where they want to be in an orbit around the moon. And so this trajectory appears to be an optimal way to get into the near rectilinear halo orbit. Now, what does that do? Okay, so I did some research, and again, I'm not a mission planner, so I can't guarantee, but if you look at a near rectilinear halo orbit from the Earth, what it looks like is a necklace that's hanging down from the moon. So you see this, part of the necklace is near the moon, and the rest of it kind of droops down like this. And so what that gives you is a close approach to the moon, and it gives you a far away from the moon. And so the far away position, as I understand things, gives you a lower energy requirement if you want to put a lunar gateway around the moon. So a higher orbit is going to be more stable. So if they put the lunar gateway in this halo orbit, the idea is, I think you can get close to the moon. So if you have to pick up the returning spacecraft from low lunar orbit, you're close to it already, so they can rendezvous. Whereas at the high point, you have you don't have to burn as much energy station keeping to keep the lunar gateway where it should be. Okay, so what was I going to say? So that's really all I know about the rectilinear halo orbit. But you're going to hear on the news eventually a lot about halo orbits, and this is the only one. There's all different kinds. So I would just mention that. So the other thing to notice about this figure eight is it's a free return trajectory. Most of you have seen Apollo 13. They talk about a free return trajectory, which means they don't have to fire the SPS. They just use Isaac Newton. It goes around the moon and does this figure eight, and it comes back to Earth, and they're safe. They didn't do that. They did something different. But that's the idea behind a free return trajectory. Okay. All right, so they are going further out from the Earth than any astronaut has ever gone. So that's quite a feather in their cap. So the launch. So this is, I added this slide. This is directly off nasa.gov. And what it looks like, I look at the timing for this, and this is almost exactly the same timing as we had for shuttle. So at T-8, I think that's when they light off, 8 seconds, that's when they light off the main engines. So the water deluge starts, you see the sparker turn on, whatever you call that thing, and then you see the flames start to come out of the main engines. And between T-7 seconds and T0, there's a gimbal test of the main engines. They pivot them. I don't know if they're doing that for SLS. I don't recall seeing that in the Artemis I flight, but maybe they do. So on a shuttle, those main engines, you could steer them, which is nice. I mean, you can control the direction of the rocket. Anyway, so at T-7 that starts, and at T0, the SRBs are lit off. Once you light off the SRBs, you don't stop. So here's the thing. How would you abort an SRB? And I never saw anyone talk about this on shuttle except once. And I think this is speculation, but what I remember from early days before STS-1, the first shuttle flight, the plan was they were going to blow the top off the SRBs. And so since the SRB is an annular ring, a propellant and oxidizer, it burns from the inside out. It doesn't burn from the bottom up. So if you blow the top off the rocket, the SRB, then you get thrust at both ends. And so you get neutral thrust. As long as you don't let go of it, it'll stay put. But then all that heat, I just don't know that, I don't think they would do that. It just seems dangerous. Anyway, that's an old story from shuttle. Okay, so tower clear. So at about, it says 7 seconds, T plus 7 seconds, 488 feet. Wow. Okay, that's pretty high. Anyway, so yeah, this thing is big. It's 32 stories tall. It's a huge rocket. And so at tower clear, prior to tower clear, the operation of the launch is handled in the fire control room at Kennedy. It's this, if you ever see a picture of the great big vehicle assembly building with the American flag on the side of it and all that, everyone knows that. But below it, there's a thing that looks like a electric razor. That's the fire control room. That's where those guys are. So they're in there, and they're doing the rocket. At T plus, or rather at tower clear, that's the traditional handover between Kennedy and Houston. And then I don't even know what they call them these days, the flight control rooms, FICRs, Mission Operations Control Room, MOCR. They had different names for it when I was there. They change the name all the time. They get control of it at tower clear. Okay, the other thing I don't remember from Artemis 1 is, do they do a roll program? So on shuttle, as soon as they got tower clear, at launch, the tail on the shuttle was pointed south. And after they got up to tower clear, the tail pointed east. They did a roll maneuver. And then they flew up like this. And so the astronauts were upside down, and that gave them better lift. It was a better trajectory for the shuttle. Whether they do it on this guy or not, I don't know. So it's just something to watch for on the mission. The other thing about why do they do a tower clear? So the launch pads 39A and 39B, which belong to Kennedy, and the others belong to Canaveral. The Kennedy launch sites were built back in Apollo. And so you have this giant crawler that wheels everything out to the launch pad, and it doesn't turn very well. So you had to approach the launch pad from a certain angle. That's what I've heard. And so that's why if they want to roll and head east, because they're flying west-east, they do the roll maneuver, because initially the tail is south, so then they go tail east. Okay, so that's what happens. And the other thing that's decided at launch is the inclination of the orbit. So what is the inclination of the orbit? So if you launch straight east, the inclination of the orbit is the latitude of the launch site. So you're going straight east. If you're going to a thing like ISS, space station, which is way up high in inclination, it goes further north and south. It doesn't do the equator, it goes up north and south. You have to go uphill, up the north coast of the United States. And then when you do a MECO, when your engine shuts down, that will be your inclination. And so from the point of view of someone on Earth, it looks like a sine wave. But for you, it's just like this. The Earth is like this, and you're going like that. So it looks like a sine wave as the Earth rotates. Okay, so let's see, we're up to max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. 1,041 miles per hour. Is that speed of sound? I don't remember, but it's close. Anyway, so their altitude is 43,795 feet, and you have what looks like, let's see, SRB SEP, solid rocket booster separation occurs at 2 minutes, 8 seconds. I think for shuttle, it was almost the same. I think it was 2 minutes, 12 seconds. And then right after, or soon after, at 3 minutes 28, you do tower jet, last launch abort separation. And the tower, the launch escape tower, engines fire. pull that away from the rest of the vehicle, and it's sacrificial. It goes back into it burns up or falls into the Atlantic. By the way, the SRBs are recoverable. They have these giant tugboats that pull the SRBs back to Kennedy, and they refurbish them. And so that's a nice thing to do. And then finally, at 8 minutes, and I think shuttle was about 8 minutes, MECO, main engine cut off. The main engine cuts off, and the ride starts to get really, well, actually the ride's cooler, smoother after SRB set, but then you're basically flying in space. So you're up there, and you're having fun. Okay, so at 8 minutes, 18 seconds, the SLS is separated from the ICPS, which is now the primary means of propulsion in addition to the RCS and on the service and command or crew modules. So that's at 8 minutes and 18 seconds. You're up 534,000 feet. You're in space, and then there is a burn from the ICPS. I don't know if that circularizes the orbit or what the point of that burn is. They just call it a perigee raise maneuver. So that means the perigee is, maybe that is what it is. So if you have an orbit, you have a perigee and an apogee. Perigee is how close is like the low point of your orbit with respect to the surface of the Earth. Apogee is how far away you are. So it sounds like what they're doing is they have an elliptical orbit after MECO, and then they fire the engine on the ICPS to round out the orbit. Now you've got a round orbit. Now during at some point during the launch environment, being a comm guy on shuttle, we went from, on the first flight of the shuttle, we used ground stations. There was one at Milo, one at Ponce de Leon, one at Bermuda. There were some in Africa. There were some in Madrid. And you also have the Deep Space Network. You have all those guys. And they're all around the world. But after, I forget how many shuttle flights, we finally got geosynchronous satellites, which means a geosynchronous satellite is a satellite that orbits the Earth once every 24 hours. So so it's good. I mean, you can get more coverage. You can get 24/7 coverage if you do it right, and you can communicate with the teachers. Now, because they're moving so freaking fast, 17,500 miles per hour for shuttle, probably something close to that for this. In fact, does it say? Yeah, 17,627 miles per hour is close. Okay, so there is a thing for comm guys that worry about called the Doppler effect. So as you are flying towards the TDRS, it doesn't really matter how far away it is. You're really, as you come over the hill, the curve of the Earth, the Doppler is like 55 kilohertz. Maybe I shouldn't say it. Okay, I won't say anything more about it. So, anyways, so they have to, the radios have to track the signal. And there's a whole bunch of science in the radios that do this. So the radios are incredible. Let's see. Okay. So they do the circular. Then they ICPS apogee raise burn. You notice there's a time. So 1 hour 48 minutes. That's if it's a nominal. Everything's nominal. At 1 hour 48 minutes they do an apogee raise burn. So that makes it go from circular, I suppose, up to this really high apogee, right? And so they're doing that. They're doing the raise burn using the ICPS. Then they do what they call an ICPS Orion ProxOps demo, and I'll show you a picture of that. It looks like this. So the Orion separates from the ICPS. And then after it does, you'll notice it's doing something akin to what the Apollo guys did when they had to retrieve the lunar excursion module from the third stage, the S4B. I think that's what this is all about. The other thing is there's all these tests, and so it's like, I guess, the first exposure to real sophisticated rendezvous flight dynamics for this vehicle. And this is surmise on my part. Because I haven't been on the program for 11 years. So this is just what I think this is. Okay, so then we finally get into this mission profile again. Let's see, we've done launch, we've done jettison booster, SRB SEP, perigee raise, apogee raise, Orion SEP from interim cryogenic, and we did this test, this rendezvous, and pulling out the lunar excursion module. That's what it looks like. And then we finally get, assuming everything is perfect and the flight controllers are all happy and the crew's happy, you get a go for TLI. And that's a wonderful thing. So then you're outward bound to the moon. And it's done with the SPS, or the main engine on the back of the service module. So that will be a wonderful thing. So they'll finally be on their way to the moon. And we'll do that they'll be way far away from the backside of the moon. There'll be something like 4,000 miles from the lunar far side as they fly around the moon. And let's see, there are some correction burns outbound to the moon, as I understand things, hopefully not too many. And then they come back, and there are some burns to get them in alignment to the moon. Now, coming back in entry interface and the heat shield and all that stuff. Now, what they did on Artemis 1, I don't know what the official name for it is, but I think they did what's called a double bounce. So if you have a rock and you skip it on the water, it hits the water, skips, and maybe on the second one it goes in the water. And so, because this is a heavy vehicle, it's heavier than Apollo, they don't just come. Well, let's back up just a minute. So when you're coming back from the moon, imagine a roller coaster. You leave the gravitational influence of the moon, and all of a sudden now you're under the gravitational influence of the Earth. That's a long way drop from a roller coaster. So by the time you get to the Earth, you're really screaming. You're fast. And so in order to slow down, you have to use aerobraking. That's what it's called. And you hit the Earth's atmosphere, and because it's so fast and you've got to get it nailed so that you don't burn up or fly off, skip off into space, you have to hit it just right. And so it's a very thin window, at least it was for Apollo. On this one, on Artemis 1, they did two bounces. They hit the atmosphere, they got some reduction in velocity, and they cooled off. And then they reheat again, and they went in on the second bounce. That's how I understand. What they're going to do on this mission, I don't know. And you may have heard in the news that there was an issue with the heat shield. And what I remember hearing on the root cause was the heat shield material is held together with some kind of polymer, and there was a bubble. And on the second bounce, or the re-entry, the heating caused the bubble to burst, and it blew off some of the heat shield, so you got the scarring, these things. Whether that's, I don't know the real details of that, but I think that's what I heard. So I think the root cause has been identified, and the solution has been applied and has been signed off on. Okay. First for Artemis 1. So we've covered the mission. First for Artemis 2. It's the first black man, woman, and non-American and Canadian to go to the moon. 4 people all at once go around the moon. The Apollo had 3. It's the first crewed flight of the SLS and Orion. It's the furthest humans have ever been from Earth. Well, I don't know why does it say will ever, but anyway, I'm sure we'll be going up further. CubeSats will be launched. So Apollo had some satellites. I think there was one, Deke Slayton's flight, where he did a spacewalk, and he opened the door and he flung the satellite out of the door. So that was kind of cool. I don't know if I think this one's a little bit more elegant in terms of deployment, but Deke Slayton was, not Deke Slayton, the Colorado guy. What was his name? Schweikert. Anyway, so images and observations on the dark side of the moon. So the images and observations is critical because if you recall, Apollo was a low lunar orbit, and they were very close to the moon. So because they have a bigger vantage point, they're actually going to have a better view. So the things that these guys are going to see that no one's seen, at least not from the American space programs. So that's a wonderful thing. Science. As I mentioned, they're going to have dosimeters. There's going to be an Artemis research for crew health and readiness. Astronaut Fitbits. I have no idea what that's going to do. I'm sure the astronauts will love it. Let's see. Medical tests and those poor guys. Anyway, so there's Avatar organ on a chip. I don't know what that is either. Anyway, they're going to collect data. I should have researched this. I apologize for not knowing what Avatar is. I'm sure it's not big blue guys running around. They're going to collect data to understand the impact of spaceflight on the body. That's always a good thing. And geology and geography is observations on the dark side of the moon. Now, one of the things they're going to do that's not on this list, I've heard, and I actually looked it up. They're going to do a comm experiment with a optical comm system. It actually has a name, an acronym. And when I started working in Orion in 2006, my NASA counterpart, her name was Sharda Vidalpur. She worked at JSC. And what she said was they wanted to get what they call hyperspectral imaging of the moon, which I think is some sort of really elegant remote sensing. Like you can actually tell what the constituency, I suppose, chemical components are of the surface. But that requires a lot of data to go transit back to the Earth. So the optical communications, if they can make that work, they're using a telescope, interestingly enough. So instead of an antenna, well, basically a telescope is an antenna if you think about it, they're using a telescope to get the comm back to the Earth. So it'd be a wonderful thing if they could get that to work. Let's see. Current status. As you probably have heard, they've done the wet dress. They had the issue with the hydrogen leaks above 16% in the lower part of the rocket. And so they called off they aborted the wet dress the first time they did it. I think one of the mitigation steps is to remove the quick disconnects on the bottom of the rocket and do an inspection of the seals and make sure they're absolutely clean. There may be other things that they did. But the green rectangles are supposedly the launch windows. So starting around the early part of March, we may have, actually at the banquet, we may actually have a launch. So that'll be a cool thing. And then there's some in April. And I'm sure after that too. So now we'll talk about the crew. So I want you to think about something. So every astronaut that has ever flown on a first try has always been the best. So, maybe that's a dangerous thing to say. But it was Shepard on the suborbital, the bow and arrow trajectory. And then it was Glenn on the first orbit. And then on Gemini and Apollo, those were all new vehicles. And so they always had brave guys, responsive to orders, knew exactly what they could think on their own, and they were very good. So I want you to think of these guys that way. This is a brand new vehicle, never been flown by people before, and they're all heroes, and they're all very brave. You can look on nasa.gov, and you can see exactly who they are. And this doesn't do it justice. I mean, Christina, 328 days in space. And Navy captains, fighter pilots have flown in ISS. They all know their business. So the future. So we're about to do Artemis II. And Artemis III is going to, if it really does happen in 2028, I think that's pushing it. But, that would be an amazing thing, a lunar landing with Gateway. As you probably know, Blue Origin and SpaceX and quite a few people are going to work really hard to make this happen. I don't know who has the contract for Lunar Gateway. I don't know anything about Lunar Gateway, so I won't go into detail on that. Artemis IV, lunar landing and lunar infrastructure deliveries, SLS and gateway improvements. So at that point, I would say you're moving into an operational phase. I don't know if NASA would agree with that, but that's what it looks like to me. The Lunar Gateway Station, this is a concept drawing, I guess, or maybe that's the final one. I don't know. It's like a mini ISS. It has this modular structure with solar arrays and heat radiators and RMS on it. High gain antennas, can dock with the Orion. And in the lower left there, you see the picture of a halo orbit as seen from the Earth. So if you look at the halo orbit, the non-rectilinear halo orbit, what you'll see is there's a close approach to the moon, and there is but you have 24/7 coverage, assuming this works the way everyone hopes it will. Also, you can't tell from this, but there's some front to back motion as well. But the point is, you have complete coverage of the moon, so it's really a good way to do things. So you can also tell from this that lunar gateway is big. I mean, it's smaller than ISS, but it's still pretty big. And then the human landing system. So there are competing contracts. The upper one is SpaceX. The lower one is Blue Origin. They are slated to fly no earlier than 2027, and that'll be a great thing when they do. We'll find out. Artemis III. So this is also from the NASA.gov site. So you can see in this picture here, the near rectilinear halo orbit around the moon as seen from the Earth. That looks like the plan is to depart the Earth TLI on item number 6. They do some trajectory burns, and it looks like they enter into a 16 nautical miles from the moon. So that's pretty close. That's almost like Apollo. I suppose that's really all I wanted to say about it. So you can get all of this orbital mission planning type stuff on the NASA.gov website. This comes from a PDF file that you can download for each mission. They have a PDF file for the crew. They have a PDF file for avionics, the black boxes. They have a PDF file for just about everything. You can get a wealth of information there. I wanted to say a couple more things. The Orion, let's see, is there anything here that I haven't already mentioned? So it was largely designed, built right here in Littleton, Colorado, down at Waterton Canyon, and some of the other satellite sites around there. A lot of gifted people have worked on it. It's a real challenge to make that thing fly. Even, every little piece in there has gone through a lot of testing and certification. And it's amazing the amount of work that goes into making something like this work. So I work calm, and I want to leave you with something. And I can tell you this because it's in the NASA.gov website. So one of the things that's new for Orion, you notice anything unusual about the rocket? There's no high gain antenna on the service module. On Apollo, they had a mast that deployed, and it had 4 UHF antennas. And so they were able to get a lot of data back that had a high gain UHF antenna. When I started working Orion, we had a dish, parabolic dish. Everyone knows what a dish looks like. But you'll notice that it's not there anymore. So on the Orion, and this is in the NASA.gov website, they are using what's called phased array antennas. So the way you think of this is, if you have a dish antenna, what is the dish really doing? The dish, if you have a parabolic dish at home, pointed at a satellite or something, DirecTV, who knows, what the dish is doing, it's a mechanical device. It's aligning the waves that come down from the satellite and then they reflect off, and they hit at a point in space where they all line up in phase, and you get gain. They all add up together, and you get gain. Well, the process of phase shifting so that they all line up in phase can be done electronically now. So you can take a sine wave and you can turn a knob in an electrical device, and it will move the the RF signal, the radio signal, back and forth in phase. And so what you do is, instead of having a parabolic dish, you have an array of patches. And each patch has an RF feed comes off of it, and it goes into a phase shifter. And then the phase shifter adjusts the phase electronically, and it feeds it into a summing junction instead of a focal point. The summing junction now has the equivalent of a parabolic dish or a high gain antenna. And so when you do that, you can put the antenna below the heat shield, or below it can be conformally mounted to the surface of the antenna. And so it's not as good as a big old dish, but it's not bad. You can get some respectable gain out of it and get some broadband data back. So I think that was a big improvement. And that whole process took like a year and a half to finally settle. We went through round and round and round on that one. So NASA likes to push envelopes. They like to do new stuff all the time. And so the telescope experiment, the phased array antennas. So let me leave you with one thing to think about. So the whole process of having a parabolic dish and replacing it with patch antennas and a phase shifter with a summing junction. What if you did that at a higher frequency? And higher and higher and higher until finally you're talking about wavelengths of light. Right now, the phase shifters are god-awful expensive that they use on the right. But someday, maybe in the future, you can have a telescope that doesn't have a tube, or doesn't have a mirror, that doesn't have a lens. I mean, that would be amazing. It would be all in the camera. And it's a crazy idea, but I just love thinking about that kind of thing. So, thank you very much. Any questions?
Do you have any idea, as they're slingshotting back around the Earth, are they experiencing any sort of positive G's? Is there any forces on that spacecraft at that point, or is it?
Yeah. So if the Earth is providing an increase in velocity, then if there's an acceleration, there has to be, right?
There would be, right?
Right. So anytime you have an acceleration, they're going to feel it. So I guess so.
I'm just kind of curious what that looks like.
I don't know the magnitude. I'm sure the amount of delta V that goes between the elliptical orbit and the lunar transit, I just don't know how much that is. But that's a good question. Anybody else? Okay. Cool. Anybody online have a question?
When is the first date for available to launch?
Let's see.
March 6th.
If I can page up. March 6th? March 6th.
Okay.
March 6th.
And time?
Is there a time?
No, I don't know the time. It just had dates. I'm sure there is a time, and it may be possible to get that online.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is it only going to be one halo orbit? Are they going to do more than one halo orbit around the moon? Or?
They're only going to do one pass, and that was my question. Why on Apollo 8 that Lovell commanded, they went around and around, and they're not doing that on this one. They're using a free return trajectory, and I guess they accomplished what they call their DTOs, their design test objectives, from just that one pass.
Don't they have an option?
To orbit the moon?
More, yeah.
I don't know. Because you have to burn fuel to slow down to be captured by the moon, and then you have to burn fuel to reach lunar escape velocity. So I
what
guess
about orbiting Earth? How many times are they going around?
it's just one, it's not even one orbit, it's a figure eight, so it looks like a teardrop. So they go to the lunar far side, and basically it's a flyby to the moon, a flyby, and then they pick up some velocity, and it pushes them back towards the Earth, And then as they're departing the moon, as long as they're under lunar influence, they start to slow down until the Earth gets control and they get pulled in to the Earth.
Okay.
So before TLI, or translunar rejection, they're not even going to orbit the Earth more than once.
Oh, no, they will.
Oh,
I
they
think,
will?
yeah, I think the plan is, and they have contingencies based on what it looks like.
So it's like Apollo, they'll orbit a few times.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Mehmet, they will orbit the Earth multiple times, but
Well,
not,
that was my understanding because
Yeah.
otherwise it wouldn't take 10 days.
I thought you meant to orbit the moon multiple times.
No,
but
no.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yes, you are correct. They can orbit the Earth as many times as needed. And they can abort
Right.
the whole mission and come back if needs be.
The other thing is the 10-day is not that fixed, I think. It is
It's the 6th? Okay.
you said it's a 10-day mission. Am I right?
10-day mission, that's the plan.
Right. But it could be 9 days or 11 days.
That's right.
Okay.
They have consumables on board for 20 days, as I understand.
Right. Right.
How the translunar or the halo orbit? It looks like can get quite close to the Earth, as well as to the moon.
It's actually a let me see if I can go back. So
It's quite a long orbit.
it is a long orbit, but the apogee from the moon is the same distance from the Earth as the perigee.
Okay.
So from the Earth, it looks like a necklace.
Okay.
So if you think of it that way. So it doesn't, yeah, there is some back and forth, but not a whole lot.
Got it. But they're literally, so the orbit will probably take, what, 2 days or something? To complete the halo orbit?
The halo orbit?
Maybe 4 days?
I don't know. I think we have that. In fact, I do have it. Hang on one second here. Brought these.
Yeah, I'm just for Artemis III or the Translunar Gateway, they're going to be in that.
So,
halo orbit. So
I will read this to you. There is no shortage of options for how a spacecraft could orbit the moon, but two in particular, low lunar orbit like Apollo did, and a distant retrograde orbit are helpful for understanding why this new halo orbit is the right for gateway. A spacecraft in low lunar orbit follows a circular or elliptical path very close to the lunar surface, completing an orbit every 2 hours in low lunar orbit. Transit between gateway and the lunar surface would be quite simple in a low lunar orbit given the proximity, but because of the moon's gravity, more propellant is required to maintain the orbit. Therefore, low lunar orbit is not very efficient for gateway's planned long presence at the moon, at least 15 years before they have to replace it. Okay, so they do the high orbit to save fuel, the gas they use to maintain. And then, the high orbit is more fuel efficient. The distant orbit would make it harder for a lander to get to the moon. So you don't want to use the lander's fuel to make up for the safety you get in the high orbit. So a third option is the near rectilinear halo orbit, and there's the geometry why they call it rectilinear. If you go on Wikipedia, it has pictures that show you how all this works. So hanging almost like a necklace from the moon, NRHO is a 1 week orbit. So it takes them 7 days to complete one of those orbits. And there's balance between the Earth and moon gravity. The orbit will periodically bring Gateway close enough to the lunar surface to provide simple access to the moon's south pole, where astronauts will test capabilities for living on other planetary bodies, including Mars. So what I remember reading is that at the south pole of the moon, there are craters so deep they've never seen the light of day, ever. And they think there's water, or I think they've done some remote sensing to say that there is water there. So it doesn't end with surface access and fuel efficiency. It will allow scientists to take advantage of deep space environment far away from the moon for a new era of radiation experience that will inspire greater understanding of potential impacts of space weather on people and instruments. So NRHO will also give Gateway a continuous line of sight or view of the Earth, translating into uninterrupted communication between the Earth and the Moon. So we said that. NASA is preparing to launch a cislunar autonomous positioning system technology ops and navigation experiment, or CAPSTONE, that will use a 55-pound CubeSat to gather data on the characteristics of the orbit. So apparently they're going to deploy this CubeSat while they're out there. Or maybe it'll go on another mission.
Elegantly.
Joe, did they state what is the basic reason or rationale for circling the moon?
Well, so the orbit they plan is, so because they're not going to fire any jets to round out the orbit, they are going to go around the moon to simulate, I think, arrival at the lunar gateway. So they would dock with the gateway close to the apogee, I assume, and then, or actually it didn't look like, well, I don't know. So they dock with a station, and this trajectory they're going to fly on Artemis II is like a dry run, I think. For
Right.
location.
That should be stated somewhere, that the reason why they are going around the moon is to prepare for the next mission.
Yes, and I think the NASA site has those details.
Okay.
I just missed it. I should have put that in there.
And I think it's also to get enough delta V to test the TPS on the way back in.
Yeah.
Thermal
it is not
protection
just-
system?
It
Yes.
is not just to take pictures of the other side of the moon, but rather it has multiple rationales for it.
Yep.
I mean, we are interested to see the pictures of the other side, what you call dark side, which is not really true. It's not a dark side, but it is also to prepare for the next mission.
That's right. So they will go around the dark side and do a lot of imaging or see things that the other Apollo guys never saw. But as you say, they're not going to get into orbit.
But we do have pictures by the Chinese, I think, of the other side.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.